John Calvin
There's a
then.
lot of Mennonites.
Luther was the outspoken leading sort of person. The person who was going to be like the pastor and the leader. John Calvin had a different personality. We saw that he was born in 1509. So in 1517, when the 95 Theses were printed, how old was he? He was 8 years old, roughly. So he's part of a younger generation, but he was the one who really systematized the thought, the theology. Martin Luther was out leading and speaking. He was the one who was writing. Calvin's father was the secretary to the Bishop of Noyon in France, which means that John had a good education. He studied humanism, going back to the sources, in Paris, where he learned about John Wycliffe and John Huss and Martin Luther. But he says, I was stubbornly tied to the superstitions of the papacy. Ouch. Calvin eventually broke with the Roman Catholic Church. We don't know when or why. And when Francis I changed his policy of tolerance toward Protestants in France, John, who was raised in France, went into exile in Switzerland. Who did we hear from Switzerland? Zwingli. And so in 1536 he started writing in Switzerland, in exile now. He wrote the Institutes of the Christian Religion, 516-page book that could fit into a person's pocket, which simply meant that we were printing lots of copies of it that people were carrying in their pocket. Circulated in France, it had 4 chapters that dealt with 1, the law, 2, the creed, 3, the Lord's Prayer, and 4, what? The false sacraments of Rome. Ouch. Ouch. That would hurt. Various editions were printed, 3 subsequent editions. The last one before he died is the final edition, which had grown from 4 chapters to 80 chapters. Calvin believed his gifts were not as a leader or a pastor like Martin Luther or Zwingli, but more as a scholar and an author, so he was the one who was writing. When passing through Geneva, Switzerland one day, he was convinced to stay, and he became the reformer of Geneva, until he was later banned from the city for insisting on excommunicating unrepentant sinners. Do you remember our rule? I'll tell you once, I'll tell you twice in private, I'll tell you once in public. After that, you're gone. And he was banned from the city because he was just too strict. Martin Butzer, or Butzer if you prefer, convinced him to lead the Reformation in Strasbourg for 3 years. And then they invited him back to Geneva. In an attempt to reflect the practice of the New Testament, he organized all the ministry in Geneva, Switzerland, into 4 groups as he read them in the Bible. In the Bible, he read about priests who would do the ministry of the Word and sacraments. In the Bible, he read about teachers, so they would educate people. In the Bible, he read about elders, presbyters, so they would supervise the religious life. And he read about deacons, those who were the table waiters, who took care of the needs of people, so they would do the social service. Calvinism came to be seen as rigidly dogmatic. Remember the whole thing about expelling people from the community? They were seen as very rigid. And when a noted physician was burned by the Calvinists, that really was a wake-up call for some people. Like, wait a minute, is this really what we should be doing? Calvin, like Butzer, took an intermediate position on the Eucharist, somewhere between Luther and Zwingli. Remember, Luther said that Christ is with the bread and the wine, consubstantiation. Zwingli said it's just a symbol. He said the presence of Christ in communion is real, but it's a spiritual presence, however that's to be understood. And so Christ is not merely symbolic, but also we can't say that Christ is present on several altars. If Father Roy and Father Livardo and Father Cleopas and Father Jamie all celebrate Mass at the same time, is Christ present in 4 different places? He wasn't ready to say that. His teaching spread from Geneva in Switzerland to Holland, the Netherlands, to Scotland, to Hungary, Bohemia, to England, to France. And so in those places, Calvinism became widely accepted by large numbers of people.